and sustainably use the oceans, seas, and marine resources, and also change to sustainable use of terrestrial ecosystems and halt biodiversity loss. It's normal to feel hopeless and small when you stand in front of these enormous challenges. But I say, yes, we can. The global and industrial way of producing food is one basic reason for this situation, and it has failed in many ways. But things can change. Time is limited, but indeed there are hopes and possibilities. A sense of urgency or even emergency is needed, but we can make a change. We have lots of resources that we do not use, for example, in the cities. And a growing awareness shows that the urbanization is not only a problem, but also gives lots of examples for new ideas and solutions. When I was a member of the European Parliament not long ago, I financed a report on urban farming that clearly proved that the change already is on the way in many of our mega cities around the world. We can grow food on rooftops as well as in abandoned industrial areas. Today, most cities have lots of unused land due to expanding cities with big suburban areas. This land could be used to address food insecurity. One study from Cleveland shows that city could actually meet up to 100% of its fresh produce needs. Inside London town, there are over 100 farms right now. This do also show that we can reduce the energy and emissions when transport food into the cities. We must stop also the black and white rhetoric on meat and vegetables. Both fish and meat has a place on the plate, depending on how and where it is produced, transport and used. I live in Swedish Lapland. It's no more problematic there to eat local moose or reindeer if you compare with carrots. But we do not have reindeers for everyone, or not even wild salmon. Another revolution on food production is the change for perennial cereals. This gives possibilities for collecting coal in the ground instead of turning it upside down every year and produce greenhouse gases. A big positive climate change. Fish farming is a big industry today when environmental problems like many other food industries. Aquaponic is a new alternative that have the possibility to address overfishing in our oceans while creating new jobs and with much less negative effects, if you do it the right way. No antibiotic is needed. We may use insects, waste, and other sustainable protein resources to feed fishes on land. It's also more resource efficient. We can use less feed to produce more, and we can combine it with the production of vegetables to become even better. When talking about the use of antibiotics, since many years, the Swedish government has been strongly committed to the fight against AMR, both for humans and animals. The overall use of antibiotics in Sweden over the past 20 years has decreased substantially without measurable negative consequences, and levels of antibiotic resistance are low compared with most other countries. I'm proud of our hard and persistent work, but there is no room for contentment. AMR is an evolving threat that calls for an evolving response. AMR is a worldwide challenge, strongly connected to our breeding of livestock. We must work together to be successful, and no country can tackle health threats of this kind on its own. But the Swedish example shows that it is clearly possible to stop unnecessary use of antibiotics. Poverty on the globe is still a big problem, not the least in Africa. Still around 600 million Africans do not have access to electricity. If we, for example, can deliver resource-efficient stoves to households in Africa, the need of wood and charcoal suddenly could diminish with around 50%. When recently traveling in Tanzania and Mozambique, I saw this with my own eyes. The use of charcoal, also in the big cities, creates vast areas of deforestation, creating a great loss of biodiversity and accelerating climate change. Another effect is that 1 of 4 children that dies under the age of 5 dies because of air pollution. This is very much related to air pollution just from smoke coming from open fires while cooking indoors, affecting especially young girls. Planting trees is important, electrification also. At the same time, we need to stop using fossil fuel-based energy. Either it is used in food production or in other fields. The good thing is that a transition to green energy is both possible, cheaper, and necessary in order to stop climate change. Renewable energy is here, and investments in the right direction must increase now. In this field of international development, Sweden and the World Bank has taken decisions to stop or phase out fossils. But neither the European Union or fortunately not Norway has not yet done the same. It's all connected. Climate crisis, diminishing biodiversity, poverty and health. Food and energy is central for all these questions. The good news is that this holds not only for the challenges of our time, but also for the solutions. We can solve many of our time's most urgent problems if we think again and does it right this time and sustainable. Thank you.
Lléveme al globo de Estocolmo, por favor.
Could you take me to the Stockholm Globe, please?
Hello, I'm trying to reach the Eat Producer Boss person.
That could be me. Is this the voice of Eat Stockholm Food Forum?
Hi.
Okay, Claire, let me tell you that the Eat Forum this year will be super. Your voice will be a big part of that. And we have a great new way to kick it off. Multiple stages, 1,000 delegates, and we have the science to show now. We thought of starting with a newscast. There's actually been some positive development in the world since last year.
You want me to sound like a news presenter this year?
Yes, well, like France put a ban on all 5 pesticides that threaten the bee population. Meanwhile, the Impossible Burger and other meatless meat products ramp up to meet a surprising demand worldwide. And in Ghana, millennials are making high-tech, pesticide-free farming sexy. They call it the new bling.
Oh, wow! That is good news!
And we'll hear from faces of the food system from around the world.
So I could start by saying something like,
Good morning. It's 9 a.m., Wednesday, June 12th. Here is a special news bulletin. All around the world, the great food transformation is starting to spur.
Yeah, it could be great. And then we plan on cutting to a reporter in the room, saying something like, here in Stockholm, the room is packed with the people ready to solve. And then you go, welcome to the Eat Stockholm Food Forum.
Welcome to the Eat Stockholm Food Forum 2019.
Yes, so positive news, hope. We're all in it together, call to action sort of thing, you know.
But boss,
Yes?
since last year I thought, well, where I live, we try to sort our garbage and eat, sensible foods. Maybe thinking that food can fix things. But really here, the news is just about Brexit and spin doctors galore. From an environment perspective, I've been sort of one on the outside looking in, and even I want to do something.
Are you turning into an activist, Claire?
Maybe everything moves forward, but I get the sense that we need new heroes who say, we will save the world in caps lock and bold letters from the top of the pyramids.
What is cool though, from the inside, there are good incremental steps taken all the way.
But you need to consider introducing what woke me up. The domino effect.
The plastic chips? Oh, you mean as in the effect of global warming?
No, see, let's flip it around.
Good idea.
Domino as in someone needs to be the first mover, be the one that triggers the difference. A very smart young girl recently said to some very powerful people, adults keep saying we owe it to the young people to give them hope. But I don't want your hope. I don't want you to be hopeful. I want you to panic. I want you to feel the fear I feel every day. And then I want you to act. I want you to act as you would in a crisis. I want you to act as if the house was on fire. Because it is.
Powerful stuff, like Richard Horton said.
We've done a really bad job over the last 20 years.
I trust the people at the forum. Remember the big question from last year? Ask it again.
We have to act in a way that we've never acted before.
Good idea, a feeling of we could be heroes.
Sorry, I'm rambling. And we are running out of time.
There's still time.
Is there though? Because there's also a new concept on the rise of when is it too late?
Someone somewhere must be the first mover.
Just do it. To quote Professor Tim Lamb.
But yet I'm an optimist, because I think we humans are pretty stupid, but we're not that stupid.
Let us tell the good things happening. There might be a new leader in the room.
Okay, Claire, now BAFTA-winning activist, let's begin.
Good luck to you all this year, and indeed in the years to come. It's 9 a.m., Wednesday, June 12th. Here is a special news bulletin. All around the world, the great food transformation is starting to spur. France put a ban on all 5 pesticides that threaten the bee population. The revolutionary Impossible Burger struggles to meet surprising demand in the US, as meat-free protein products are taking off across the world. The pork-hungry Chinese market is next. In Ghana, millennials are returning to the soil, making high-tech and pesticide-free farming sexy. The city of Austin, Texas, bans food waste. And today, in Stockholm, EAT gather brave people of many powers to clear a path towards a future of food, one that will save us all and the planet we live on. Good morning. This is the Eat Stockholm Food Forum. Live from Stockholm, here is the founder and executive chair of EAT, Dr. Gunhild Stordalen.
Friends, dear friends, finally, I'm so excited to see all of you here today. Thanks so much for taking the time and coming. And you know, we consider you all as part of the extended EAT family. So welcome to our annual gathering. And welcome to the beautiful city of Stockholm. 10 months ago, just a short subway ride away from here, a young girl walked out of school and over to the Swedish parliament. And with her, she had a hand-painted cardboard poster with saying, "Skolstrejk for klimatet," or "School strike for climate." Her name is, of course, Greta Thunberg. And she says, what is the point of learning facts when the most important facts clearly means nothing to our society? Greta claims that we, the generations before her, are stealing her future. These past months, teens from around the world have joined her cause as she has addressed leaders at COP, in Davos, the EU. Greta from Stockholm has become the face of one of our biggest environmental movements to date. There's been school strikes in more than 150 countries. And 3 weeks ago, millions of kids walked out of their classrooms demanding not only hope, but real change. And here we are, in Greta's backyard, 1,000 grown-ups from more than 80 countries. And yes, most of us flew in by plane. I know the potential impacts. The potential impact of leaders gathering can by far outweigh the emission it takes to get here. But only if we keep stressing ourselves, asking ourselves, what do we make out of this? The good news is that this year we've never been in a better position to really join forces and scale up our efforts. We now have the first scientific targets for how to get it right on food for both people and planet. And that means we can finally start to align actions, not based on ideologies or trends or whatever is most likely to gain consensus. No, we can base our action and align them based on the best available evidence. The EAT Lancet, as you may know, outlines a safe operating space at a global level, but does not give us answers for each country, culture, ecosystem, nor the specific pathways for how we get there. And that is why EAT, together with partners, have ignited science-based discussions around the world. In Ethiopia, we've listened to African Union leaders striving to change their strategies from enough food to enough quality food. In Mexico, we've listened to consumers calling on industry and governments to change their unhealthy food environment. And in France, we've listened to NGOs stressing how all transitions must be socially just, not only the food transition. And we have listened to smallholder farmers and ranch owners. We have listened to entrepreneurs, investors, mayors, chefs, and of course, kids on strike. And now, here in Stockholm, we want to hear from you. There are just as many faces of the food system as people on this planet. Of course, there is no one-size-fits-all solution. There is, however, one thing, one key to our common way forward. The one word I would say all scientists stress, business calls for, and basically everyone highlights. And that is collaboration. Collaboration. What does it actually mean? It's not a way of telling others what to do without taking responsibility on your own. Just like calling for a broad coalition should not serve as procrastination, because change is inevitable. No, collaboration means rolling up our sleeves towards a common goal and starting now. It means taking in other people's challenges and being open about your own. It means sometimes choosing to trust others to help them trust you. And always trusting that the long-term value of staying together beats our individual short-term interests. Ironically, for all to move forward, someone has to start. Someone has to start, like the governments of Indonesia and New Zealand, who are now adopting the Eat Lancet targets into national policies, just like Copenhagen is doing at the city level. And big companies like Umo and Hurtigruta, who are now piloting Eat Lancet measures in restaurants. Ronnie Khan, who started rescuing food from a small van in Sydney. Her organization, Us Harvest, is now engaging all of Australia in cutting food waste. Or Chef Selassie, who started a nomadic eating concept in Ghana. She is now inspiring Africans all over to bring back forgotten food and forgotten cultures. And these are only some of the many frontrunners you are going to meet here over the next couple of days. Remember, behind every example of leadership, big or small, doesn't matter, behind every example of leadership is a story of personal commitment. Governments don't change. People change governments. Companies don't change. People change companies. And it's when people come together, they can change communities, even change the world. As I guess you know, the EAT hashtag has been food can fix it. But at the end of the day, food won't fix anything until we come together to fix food. We are all aware of the urgency. The growing global health crisis on the one hand, and natural ecosystems on the brink of collapse on the other. But look around you. Look around. a completely different ecosystem is emerging. A community of different actors from different nations, cultures, communities with different backgrounds, but with vast collective powers. And our community is growing exponentially. And so is the avalanche of small and large-scale advances. Is it happening fast enough, though? From time to time, I have to really remind myself of a very first EAT Forum here in Stockholm 5 years ago, where we were less than 400 people from 28 countries. Back then, food was a totally scattered issue, and it was rarely mentioned in climate or health agendas. Now, basically everyone agrees that we need to reboot the food system and make it fair, healthy, sustainable, efficient, socially just. And in 2019, the world is starting to grasp that the food transformation is just as crucial as the energy transition. But unlike energy, food has got colors, smells, taste that can trigger almost all our emotions. It can make us feel good and even live longer. And the amazing thing about food is that almost everyone can make a difference. And that makes food such a powerful tool for change. All of us here in this room are change makers. If you came for simple takeaways to Stockholm, I'm afraid you will leave disappointed. We invited you here because every one of you, every single one of you here in this room have something to bring to the table. And you are smiling, Charles. And we expect a lot. We expect a lot from you. But the school children around the world demand even more. But the good thing, amongst us here, there is a multitude of knowledge, of resources, of creativity, of ideas, of influence, of power, and money. And our joint efforts can create not only hope, but real change. And what we bring home to our organizations, to our countries, to our companies, even what we pass around our own dinner tables, can trigger that domino effect of global actions. If a schoolgirl can change the global conversation alone, just imagine what we can do together. The stage is set to prepare a better future, a better food future for all, not just for 2050 or 2030, but starting now. We've got no time to waste, so without further ado, welcome again to EAT Stockholm Food Forum 2019. Thank you. Thanks again for being here.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Happy to see you.
I'm so happy to see you.
Can I please another round of applause for the amazing Gunhild Stordalen and the wonderful EAT team. Hello and welcome to the EAT Stockholm Food Forum. My name is Vanessa Ock. I am a journalist with Telemundo Network and also the co-founder of Sasha Mama, a non-profit organization that works to build climate leadership in the Latino community. And I'm so excited to be here with all of you today. What an amazing coalition. Today, we are almost 1,000 regional and international leaders from across sectors: business, civil society, science, and policy. At this conference, we will create an unstoppable wave of change that will inspire action across the globe. We'll talk about local and global solutions, key knowledge that is so important if we truly want to confront the challenges that were revealed by the Eat Lancet report. Over the next 2 days, we'll have the opportunity to hear from amazing, inspiring speakers. You will also be able to participate at very exciting side events that for sure will spark wonderful conversations. And also, we'll be able to raise the right questions that need to be answered if we truly want to create a science-based food revolution. And now, to set the stage for the next 2 days, I would like to welcome Johan Rothman and Jessica Fanso to present the state of our world. They will talk about the findings of the Eat Lancet report, and they will tell us what is ahead. And for those of you who don't know them, I will tell you a bit about them. Johan is the director of the Potsdam Institute for Climate Impact Research. He's also a professor at the Stockholm Resilience Center, and he's truly a Science International star. And Jessica Fanso is pretty wonderful herself. She's a PhD in nutrition. She has worked with the United Nations, the World Food Programme, and also Biodiversity International. She's now an Eat Lancet Commissioner and also a professor of public health at Johns Hopkins University in the United States. So with that, please welcome Johan and Jessica.
So, dear friends, Jess and myself, if we would give an honest summary of this 2019 State of the World talk, is quite simply, we're failing. We know that the food system, clearly being the most important sector for human well-being, is stuck there between a rock and a hard place. Culprit number one in terms of the challenges we're facing, victim number one in terms of the pressures caused by all human-induced, unsustainable and unhealthy pressures. But also, interestingly, solution number one. And the drama is rising. Right recently, we had the IPCC 1.5 report that laid on the table the transition we need to face in terms of climate. And quite recently, we had the IPBES report, the first global assessment on biodiversity and ecosystem services. And if you put these two, what we would argue being the most important scientific assessment we have today, together on one table, we have the scientific evidence for a planetary emergency. This emergency is now very concrete. The IPCC report shows very clearly that 1.5 degrees Celsius warming is not like any number in terms of what we can cope with in the economy. Oh no, it's a point beyond which we risk triggering biosphere feedbacks that could take us to a hothouse Earth trajectory when the planet takes over and moves us irreversibly towards a world that can no longer support humanity and food systems. We simply need to stay well below 2 degrees Celsius warming. What does this mean? It means bending the global curve of emissions no later than next year, 2020, and cutting emissions by half by 2030. This is the transformational journey that Gunhild pointed out and Peter Eriksson pointed out in the beginning. But not only that, we know that it's in the next 5 years that we determine whether we've consumed the remaining global carbon budget, and we know that the food system is the sine qua non if we will succeed or fail with that transition. But we also know that we've entered the sixth mass extinction of species. The IPBES report is so dramatic. We are losing 1 million plant-animal species at risk of extinction over the next decades. We know that we've lost 60% of vertebrates, animal species, over the last 40 years. This is a point of potential life support disruption that, when you link it with the climate challenge, puts us at this transformational stage. And as if that is not enough, we have the health challenges facing us as well.
Has Johan scared you? So let's make it a little scarier. When we look at the malnutrition in all its forms, we know that the problem is universal and massive. We have 821 million people who go to bed hungry every night. While that was declining over 2 decades, the number is going up over the last 3 years, reversing a lot of the progress that the global community has achieved. We have 150 million children who are chronically undernourished or stunted. They will never reach their full potential. That number might not seem a lot, but it's actually roughly 20% of the world's children under the age of 5. 50 million children continue to be wasted or acutely malnourished, which puts them at very high risk of mortality due to seasonal hungers, natural disasters, conflict. And 2.1 billion people, 2.1 billion adults are overweight and obese, and that number is rising. If we don't do anything about it, by 2030, 1 in 2 people will be malnourished in the world. A lot of you have seen these numbers, but they're still shocking. Interestingly, the World Economic Forum Global Risk Perception Survey looked at risks, impact and likelihood of global risks, and in the top 4 are environmental risks. This is the biggest concern globally. Food crisis also is high, but not as high as what we're seeing with the environmental trends. So we're clearly in a situation where food and environment are considered massive global risks to society.
And this was put on the table here at the EAT Forum. And in fact, emerging from the dialogues at the previous EAT Fora, actually 3 years back, this question was put on the table. How can we feed 10 billion people by 2050 within a safe operating space of a stable and resilient planet, planetary boundaries, with healthy food to avoid mortality and shortened life expectancy? So actually that emerged from our dialogues together here, which resulted in taking off on the Eat Lancet report, which is the first time ever health science, sustainability science, and agricultural research gets together to do a global assessment on trying to put scientific targets on healthy diets from sustainable food systems in a universal analysis. And I had the tremendous privilege to co-chair this with Professor Walt Willett from Harvard, who's here, and having Jess and many of you as joint friends and colleagues in this major global assessment with over 30 leading scholars from different disciplines across the world. We worked hard for 3 years to come up with the scientific targets for healthy diets from sustainable food systems to be the science that then can feed into business, communities, cities, development across the world. Now, we did this on the health side and on the sustainability side by applying a whole set of different methodologies, from modeling to data scanning to mapping off and synthesizing cohort studies, randomized trials, long-term studies from the health sciences. And I think it's fair to say, despite that science is continuously advancing, that this is the best assessment we have today of what does the state of science say in terms of healthy diets from sustainable food systems. We adopted for the first time a new conceptual framework, recognizing that we are in the Anthropocene, the new era where we humans are the dominating force on Earth, both on the sustainability side, taking an Earth system perspective on the food system, but also on the health side, recognizing, for example, at the global burden of disease work that you just was part of leading, that we are today at a global pandemic level in terms of the risks that we face in terms of unhealth related to food. So this is the framework we took. We thereby were able to explore on the health side, across all food groups, the different human boundaries from whole grains to vegetables, fruits, proteins, the whole set of elements that defines a healthy diet. And Jess will come back to the numbers here. But then we also took on the planetary boundaries, asking the question, what are the primary causes for risks in terms of unsustainable developments in the world related to the food system? And that these are biodiversity, land, water, nitrogen, phosphorus, and climate. So it's not only a climate issue, it's a systemic issue related to all challenges we're facing on planetary sustainability. And on the health side.
So what did the group come up with? Again, this was led by the great Professor Walter Willett and the team working on the commission. This is the healthy diet. This is the reference diet in much of its controversy and debate, and we'll talk about that a bit more later. Just to highlight a few things, obviously what many other reports have shown, we need to increase whole grains, fruits, vegetables, legumes, healthy nuts, seeds, and reduce the amount of protein sources, particularly red meat and red processed meat, the salted cured meats like prosciutto and mortadella and meatballs, which are so good. So it's really limiting those, and we'll come back to why that's so important. Just so you know, this is what it looks like on the plate. Half the plate's fruits and vegetables, whole grains, plant-based proteins, and minimizing sugar, red meats, and starchy vegetables. And it's something to take note of that this diet was constructed age 2 and above. Under 2 children have special needs for growth and development, so these were not included in the diet. Now, the interesting thing is, what does that mean for food production? What does that mean for landscapes and farms? Well, if you look at this graph, it's showing you 2050, business as usual, full food waste and loss, no changes there, is shown in yellow. In green is the 2050 planetary health diet, this flexitarian diet, with having food loss and waste. And just look at the changes that you'd see. We would stay no increasing production of whole grains by 2050 with the planetary health diet. We would see increases in vegetables, fruit production, fish coming from aquaculture, legumes and nuts, and a significant decrease in red meat production. This is what the planetary health diet looks like. Sonia from the commission took a snapshot of what one day of the planetary health diet looks like. Pretty delicious. You see animal source foods on that plate, but smaller amounts, but lots of fruits and veggies, whole grains, nuts and seeds. And just to show that this is a sample of different planetary health diets, of what it could look like on your plate. Obviously lots of color, lots of different varieties to meet nutrient needs. And all of these plates were modeled to look at nutrient adequacy, and they did fulfill all of the micronutrients, all the macronutrient requirements of a healthy diet. And this diet is meant to be adapted for different cultures, different traditions, depending on where people live. It's not a constructed cookie cutter approach. It's meant to be used to be creative in different cuisines. So we need to keep that in mind as we look